up to speed, up to speed, up to put you.
From the apocalypse, me, Sugar Ray Ali, pretty dancer. This is State of the Game. I am Dano. Yeah. So the doctor prescribed me steroids. He asked me had I ever been on steroids before because they make you aggressive and hostile and high energy and focused. And I said, yes, I have. And my family said I didn't change much.
Wild.
And the doctor said, oh, that's good. And I said, is it though? Is it though?
Got to ask clarifying questions.
Like me and Javier had to having real talk. You know what I mean? Is it though? So shout out to Javier. Appreciate the time. But my co-host here is like the way Jerry West is to talent evaluation.
Uh-oh.
That is the way Kay Diggy, my co-host, is to judging character.
Oh, whew.
If you have toxicity in you, Kay will sort you out.
Oh man, that could have went very left. So thank you for that. I appreciate
The circle is spotless for Kay Diggy. I went out with Kay Diggy to play pool, and the whole Old Port knew him. It was wild. It was like being out with the mayor. So appreciate you for stopping with us. Now we have a guest. Now I have these seeds in my head. You know, when we started this is like episode 300 and something. Like this is, wow. We've done a lot of these. By episode 20, I was like, I need McKendy somehow. Like it was already in my head because I had seen this. He was our James Earl Jones. He had this incredible voice. I'm talking past tense. He's right here. Don't worry, guys. But incredible voice, was just captured the stage, but was so fucking fun to sit outside with and talk about music with. And there was a turning point in the relationship for me that you weren't there for. It was one of those sessions, you're in somebody's apartment, there's plumes of smoke everywhere. You know?
Fire.
Yep. And I turn to a poet and say, I think McKendy's a scenester. I think McKendy's in this for the love you get from the stage.
Yeah.
Not the love of what we do in the craft. Now, this to put it in frame, I was coming from I'm not a slam poet. I started as a grizzled fucking short story writer in an apartment with no windows. So everybody who needed love was a fraud to me. You know what I mean? At that age. But this poet turned to me, looked me dead in the eyes, held the glance and said, you're absolutely wrong. No one's more about this than McKendy. And with that, like stamping on it, like I was like, all right, I'm watching this dude in a different way now. And that bore out the positive fruit. I was like, holy shit, this guy's great. And just put out a book of poetry. Is this your first book of poetry?
It's my first one. Yeah. It's first poetry project in the world on a press and all that official stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
McKendy Fils-Aimé. I'm doing my best with it. I'm gonna do my best with the full name. You correct. But I am so happy that you're here.
Yeah.
The book is fantastic. I gave it to Kay. I hope he has done a little bit of reading.
Yeah. Give the title of the book.
The title of the book is Sipèstisyon.
Yeah.
You could have done it. I could have done it.
Yes,
I took
It's it's in a different language, so I get it.
Yeah.
I could have done it. Sipèstisyon. It's an excellent book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great opportunity for us to stay on brand and really connect with like the different aspects of music, right?
Mm,
And poetry is an aspect of music that I am fascinated by because people still use it as a pejorative.
mm,
Talking about
hmm.
music. There was a very recent, there's an album came out on Backwoods recently called Critical Thought.
Hmm.
DJ Haram and Shaw Ray, they're booked on the show. Uh, and so there was a guy that obviously hates women, right? You can find his feed. It's like, I hate this Tierra Whack album for some reason. I hate this woman's album for some reason, all that. Um, and he was like, I hate this. There's a poetess talking, and I hate it. And I was like, wow, poetess is a negative, like
Hmm.
crazy. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of it where they'll hold it against someone that they're a poet, but we've had so many people. Def C, like, came up through Chicago with Dennis Smith,
Hmm.
you know, Teller Banks, who's killing stuff right now, came through the slam scene with Iowa, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
so it's there's all these people have these foundations in slam, but it's interesting how the world processes it. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's kind of the silliest thing to hate on somebody who has like who's a poet in music because to your point, we have so many artists who came up in slam. I think big ones that come to mind for me are like Chance the Rapper, right? He was in the Chicago youth poetry slam scene, before he even dropped a mixtape. And even guys like Mick Jenkins, who like when you hear him rapping, you're like, oh, there's something that you're doing with the language in your raps that is like very much an echoing of poetry and spoken word. And like it elevates it. And so it's like, when you hear somebody hating on being poetic in music, it's just ridiculous to me. I'm like, I feel like if you have, first of all, I think that, if you're a poet, you can inject poetry into whatever medium you're practicing in. Um, and it just helps elevate that, right? And it gives it a little something special. Um, yeah, so I think
Why
there should be more poetry in music.
why do you think people have a negative perception of poets?
I think that poets, I think there are a couple different reasons, right? I think that people see poetry as like, you know, sometimes obtuse, sometimes inaccessible, sometimes like highfalutin, right? And it can be those things, but also poetry at its best is speaking to the human condition and human experiences. But I think that the majority of folks don't realize that. And sometimes, that's poetry's fault, you have this poet these some of these some poetry that's like kind of locked away in the ivory tower and
Yeah,
made inaccessible. And then sometimes it's just, we a lot of people think poetry and they think like Shakespeare. And like Shakespeare's cool,
yeah,
but like Shakespeare is not the only poet, right? There are so many influential poets who have existed in the past 100 years alone, right? Who have accessible, well-written work that like moves you. But most people aren't willing to give that work a chance because they don't get it, right? Or like they think they don't get it, they think they're not going to get it. Um, it's maybe they don't find that it's like straightforward. So I do think it comes back to the accessibility piece, right? You could read a novel and like some people think that reading a 200, 300, 400 page novel is much more accessible, even though it takes more time, right? than reading maybe a 100-page poetry book that might give you the same like narrative and emotional arc as a novel.
It's yeah. That's interesting. I was leaning towards where you were saying, McKenny, because like people think of poetry as like imperceptible, as like beyond where they are,
Hmm.
too fancy. And like
Yeah.
I had the same kind of confused reaction when people started talking to me about French New Wave as like fancy. And so,
Yeah.
and then I went back to watch French New Wave. I'm like, oh, absolutely, it's the opposite. Like
Yeah.
French New Wave is boldly emotional.
Hmm.
They wear their themes on their sleeve, right?
Hmm.
They go out of their way to tell you what it means in ways other people would be shy to do because you would
Hmm.
look silly.
Right.
You know, it's and I love that about French New Wave. I love that about French literature. I love that
Hmm.
about the spirit of it, right? To me, there's nothing fancy about French stuff. It's passionate,
Mm.
and that's beautiful. And there's so it's the same thing for me with poetry,
Hmm.
uh, where the beauty is in the passion, right? But I
Right.
also I didn't. There was a time when I was not high on poetry back in the
Hmm.
day, and this is you're in school, you're reading like Yeats and Keats back and forth,
Hmm.
and it's like okay, you guys are scared to die. I get it. Um,
You guys are scared to die. I get it. It's hilarious, but also hella accurate.
it's a shirt. That's a shirt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then I read Langston Hughes.
Yep.
And when I read Langston Hughes, I was like, oh fuck. Like,
Hmm.
because he was shooting right between your eyes. Like he was
Yep.
like, stop jacking our shit,
Yeah.
Paul. It was like,
Absolutely.
wow, this is fucking
Absolutely.
awesome. You know, I didn't know you could do that. I thought you had to be full of purple prose. I didn't know you could be direct.
Hmm. Hmm. Even you think about somebody like who comes later, like somebody um like a Lucille Clifton or an Audre Lorde, who are also like direct, but also very technical if you know what you're looking for in the work.
Yep.
Um, and I think that the best kind of poetry is one where, you can read it, let's, for lack of a better phrasing, at the surface level and walk away with something. But if you're like a real like literary poetry nerd, you're gonna pick up on some things.
Mm.
And that's the thing that I strive to do with the book. I try to make something that was like accessible, but I'm also really trying to be as technical as possible without losing folks.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do
Hmm.
that kind of punch you in the face thing that Hughes did. Like I was thinking about Adrian Rich,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
and like that is a different kind of punch you in the face,
Yeah.
right? But it is still a punch you in the face with, patriarchy and
Hmm.
relationships and divorce, but like it's still a very powerful voice walking you through that
Right.
fearlessly. And so like to me, you kind of just have to know where to go with it,
Hmm.
you know? Uh, but yeah. So like, when did your relationship with poetry take shape?
Yeah, I mean, I probably started writing poems in high school. I've always been a creative. Before poetry, I was like doing visual art a little bit. Um, and then like middle school, early high school. And then I remember learning about Edgar Allan Poe of all people in my second grade English class. And, I don't know what it was, but that my English teacher just reintroduced me to the idea, excuse me, of metaphor. And I was like, whoa, this is the coolest shit in the world. You mean like one thing can be another thing? What? That's crazy, right? And
Yeah.
so um and then I just started trying to write poems, and like I would write, what I was writing in retrospect was like, kind of derivative of sonnets, like Shakespearean sonnets, but we all got to start somewhere. And then a couple years in, I decided that I wanted poetry to be part of my life. And around the same time, which was like around my senior year of high school, I discovered Slam Free or Die, which is a poetry slam in Manchester, New Hampshire. And like that really helped broaden my horizon of like what poetry could be. I discovered poetry slam, spoken word, um, and really just dove in. And I was nervous at first. I maybe didn't read for 6 months, my first 6 months at the reading, and then started reading, and it would take me another 6 months before I would actually try slamming. And I remember one night, there was a slam and they were looking for people to compete, and everybody was like, McKendy, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And I was like, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. And somebody who would become my mentor was like, you're absolutely ready. And I was like, I got this, I'm ready. And then
Awesome.
I signed it up, and I did okay in that first slam, enough to like bring me to the team selection finals that year. And then like I did okay with that, like did enough to like earn myself like a alternate spot. So I wasn't competing at on the national stage, but I was just there. And that experience really was so valuable to me, and exposed me to so many great talented poets, and saw what and again helped like expand my idea of what can be done with performance and writing. And ever since then I've just been trying to get better.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there was always a discussion about page poets versus stage poets.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there was a sense that a page poet could get so good on the page they couldn't read their shit
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of like artistically spaced in a way, like,
Yeah,
how do I even do this? Uh, Whereas you had like, if you were great enough to be able to do to do both worlds, you were like in a very Iggy Pop place where you're like, the album sounds like the show.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that I was lucky enough where early on, all of the people all of the people that I was striving towards, all the people I admired were doing both, right? Were or were on the cusp of successfully doing both. I remember, my first year slamming, they said, this is Patricia Smith. They said, this is Rachel McKibbins.
Yeah.
They said, these are all these wonderful folks who are like just
Yeah.
killing it.
Yeah.
These I guess they were like more hybrids at the time, doing page and stage. And so I always knew that there was a way to do both, but it just took me some years to like really figure out how, and to start paying attention to um the page in a way I hadn't. And then also understanding how to translate, like the thing that I like about um poetry slam, one of the things that I like about poetry slam is that a lot of those poems have a strong sense of voice. And the thing that a lot of literary journals and readers appreciate about poems is voice. So if you could take that voice and just like format it right, and really pay attention to the page when you're writing it, like you're out of here, because you can like create a dope line break. It's harder to create a unique voice on the page.
That was when you talked about Edgar Allan Poe and reading Edgar Allan Poe,
Mm-hmm.
it transported me back. The first time I read it, it was just on the internet. I just found some weird website that had every
Mm-hmm.
story, and I was just like reading Edgar Allan Poe. And as a short story writer, I was fucking blown away because every a lot of the short stories, I don't know if it's every one, but it's most of them, start with a page or page and a half of nonsense, crazy talk. And like, but his voice is so strong and so good that you're
Mhm.
like, he can get away with that shit. I
Right.
always thought that was the coolest thing ever.
No, definitely agree, man. Yeah, just the voice is so important in,
Yeah.
I think, in anything, any sort of literature, but especially poetry. Um, like I think it just really helps you stand apart. And really helps like the poem, yeah, be unique. And that's before we even get to, the specific, technical stuff with like language and whatnot and that you can do.
It's
So,
so strange how people come to that, Kay, because like, as an example, I had voice before I had anything else. Before I knew what the fuck I was doing, I was walking around my mom's house and just telling stories, and she was writing them down. I had my voice always. I had to put the other stuff together.
mhm,
Some people, it's the opposite. And if
right.
you're waiting for your voice, that's stressful as hell. Stressful.
Yeah. So how would you say that your voice evolved as you got involved in this slam poetry scene?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that slam really empowered me to tell it it gave me this idea. Let me rewind a little bit. It helped me realize that what I had to say mattered, and the stories that I wanted to tell from my life were important to share, right? And that they were, maybe the experience wasn't unique to me, but it was my own. And even if the experience wasn't wholly unique, I could put those stories in a poem that again made it mine, right? And that would be received, right? And so I think that's like the big thing that Poetry Slam did for me in terms of helping me find my voice.
Mm.
And just being brave and like, and yeah, brave and sometimes fearless, but it encouraged me to be brave and just to speak my truth.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's like there would be sometimes a poet would go on stage with a new piece and
Mhm.
it was well rendered, but it didn't work. And they'd
Yeah.
be like, why? And I'd be like, you know what? It's not you.
Hmm.
It's what people are talking about. It's
Hmm.
what's relevant right now, but it's not you.
It's you trying to be somebody else, you
Yeah.
know? It's you wearing your mentors on your sleeves a little too much or your influences a little too much, but it's not you. And it's might be the person trying to, write a poem about the biggest headline of the week. And it's like, that's great, but what are the stakes in the poem? Like, why should we give a shit?
Right.
Mm.
Right? Like, why should you give a shit? Because like some people, plenty of people write poems about hot button topics, and you're like, you could tell they don't really care about it. You could tell, you're just here because maybe you're trying to string together some hot lines, but it's like you don't really care.
Yeah. No, it's a weird mechanism
Hmm.
because the poem that is you could be about fucking pancakes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I have read like and heard gut wrenching poems about pancakes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh damn, pancakes, and then your father left. Crazy,
Right,
bro.
right, right. And by the way,
And like those quote,
I have to
go
put on
ahead.
the table the reputation Slam Free or Die has or
Yeah,
had while I was there
yeah,
was that it was a stone cold family. Like
yeah.
it was a family operation
Hmm.
where everyone and fought like family, all that kind of shit,
Hmm.
right? There was all
Yeah,
kinds of drama, but
yeah.
like that was family. Those
Hmm.
people rode together, and so always respected that. Um, but one of the weirdest advice things, I don't know if I've told you this, Kay.
Hmm.
There was this guy, beautiful guy, lovely guy, and he was writing important poems about his life and about things he cared about, and he was stressed out about them, and so he'd get on stage and freeze, you know. And when you freeze, he goes inside, everybody's hugging him, and they're like, "Oh, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be okay, man." I came out there when he came out to me. I pulled him aside and I dressed him down a little bit. I said, "You need to calm the fuck down. You're putting too much goddamn pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
What you need to do, you need to go over there and write a poem about your fucking dick and read a poem about your dick. Relax."
Yeah.
And he wrote a poem about his dick, and it became one of his signature pieces because it was
Hilarious.
my way of being like, just fucking relax, like just have
Yeah.
a conversation with the audience, just mess around, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
Um, yeah,
I'm with you. Like, I think that enough poets, and that's like both page and stage poets. I think enough poets don't give themselves the permission to play in their poems, to be silly, to like mess around with language, see what happens, to be goofy. Um, and like I think there's still value in doing that. And I think you could play and also convey important messages, right? Um, but I think too many people think that poems need to be serious, and then sometimes that turns into the person like your friend just like freezing on stage because they're just way too in it. Um, yeah, so play is important.
the pressure should be on the audience because they
Hmm.
don't know what you're going to do.
Right.
If you can think about it that way, you've got the element of surprise. you
Hmm.
know um, I might go on stage with a poem about a boxer who's in a
Hmm.
coma from a concussion, and I've been thinking about it all weekend. And I hope he
Right.
pulls through. Like, you don't expect that shit. So
Hmm.
if I can get the jump on you, I've got the advantage.
Mm.
But that was, yeah, the old days. But yeah, so and what happened, interestingly enough, I left the
Hmm.
slam scene
Yeah.
and I didn't want anything to do with poetry, as a lot of people go through that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But I had to take a college class on poetry.
Ah,
And the
okay.
teacher was fabulous
Yeah.
and up on everything. So he was
Yeah.
showing me old Polish poetry from the 40s, but he was also showing me Terrence Hayes and shit. And
Yeah.
so I was like, whoa. And I was like, yo, I could follow this like I follow basketball.
Yeah.
Like what I've been doing is like watching middle schoolers play basketball and being like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
and now I can just kind of watch the pros play.
Mm. Hmm.
And so that's been my thing of like the way I did this because I don't have the connections to the big poetry world.
Yeah.
I just was looking up the finalists for the National Book Award for poetry every year for the last
Hmm.
like 5 7 years
Yeah.
and pulling anything that looked interesting. And I've got my own kind of collection of names I love and people
Yeah.
I go back to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I took some time off from like writing poetry. And when I returned to it in the early 2020s, I was like, one of the questions I asked myself was, what does the landscape look like right now? Right. Because before, I was still actively slamming, but also had started like gaining, publication credits, and like kind of in veering into that side of things too. And so, I listened to a lot of, I looked at some of those same lists as you. I also listened to a lot of different like podcasts and craft talks, and like
Yep.
everybody and their mother started a poetry podcast during COVID.
It's
And
true.
I thank you to all of them.
Yeah.
I got my MFA in poetry podcasts, right? And so, but there's just such an abundant amount of information out there and conversations around um poetry and craft and conversations that so many debut poets and seasoned poets are having all the time. And thank God we live in the internet age. It's complicated. The internet is a weird place, but like I'm thankful that I had access to all those resources. and really helped me get a sense of like what the landscape looks like, today, right? Um, and I still pop into a poetry slam. I'm still active, and there are a lot of folks, in the slam scene that are still doing really exciting things. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but I think doing both like keeps me up to date on what's going on.
So you took a, I guess you call it sabbatical from poetry.
Yeah.
So when you came back, what did your poetry, was your poetry still the same, or did were you noticing differences in how you were writing?
Yeah. So I'd say that there was definitely a shift because like during that time, I went to therapy and I went back to school and I just kind of like um I kind of like refocused on some of the important relationships in my life. And so when I returned, there was like this higher level of vulnerability in my poems, right? So before, like even when Dan and I met,
Yeah.
I people liked my poems, like, and I was like pretty successful, but there was always a barrier, between what I was trying to speak to and um yeah, and just the work, right? And so I think that going to therapy and taking time and living, right? So much of creating is living. Um, helped me, get that much closer to vulnerability. And as a result, like the poems that I wrote when I returned were just like even Pierce, who had like read my work prior, was just like, what the fuck, yo, this shit
Right.
is different,
Right.
like and and I just felt like I was just, writing the truest thing to myself. Um, like I didn't set out to write the most vulnerable poems in the world. I just, my goal was to just be as direct as possible.
Right.
And yeah, and yeah, and that was the end result.
And there's a specific kind of poem that you can do in slam is like a barn burner poem
Hmm.
where you rile up the crowd and you kick
Hmm.
the energy up, and it's almost like you're giving an anthem, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember you were incredible at that. The only few times I did that, I wrestled with the emptiness it left me.
Yeah.
I
It's
wrestled
tough.
with like, did I get anything done? Was this cheap? You know,
Hmm.
like I wrestled with that. I'm not saying you should have. That's a different journey. But like that's how I was,
Yeah.
and like this is very different and very much more intensely personal.
Hmm.
So I can see how it would be a shift for people who
Yeah.
previously loved the work.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I actively slam still, and so it's been really interesting, watching all of the people who I'm in community with now who might not necessarily know like my publication history or because like I tend to like the more intensely personal shit, like those are the poems that end up getting published in journals and whatnot. Um, because they're shorter, but yeah, so it's been really interesting seeing folks who like know me for doing this particular kind of poem that might push energy into a room, right? And like maybe have like a big show-stopping performance. Pick up the book, pick up Sipèstisyon, and just be like, oh shit, like
Right.
this book is about generational trauma. This book is about
Mhm.
migration. This book is about like Haitian superstitions and folklore. And like these like, very personal pieces, right? And they're not necessarily trying to like beat their chest at you, right?
And living a life in a place where so few people will ever understand you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of I think the most important things to read and understand about superstition is like moving with like Haiti. There's just a lot of
Hmm.
swirling around how people feel about Haiti,
Hmm.
or think about Haiti or whatever they have.
Hmm.
Um, but to then be like the only person you're going to meet with that journey,
Right.
um, and to have to, it puts you in a position where everyone you meet, you're going to be the first Haitian person they've met.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've had a long conversation with my friends in my friend group about this because I'm Jewish in Maine, and I've been the first Jewish people a lot of people have met. You
Right.
know, I've had that journey. My friend who's Filipino, he had that journey.
Right.
We would talk about that as roommates, and I'd be like, we kind of have to represent
Mm-hmm.
because if that person meets me and likes me, they'll be better to the next Jewish person they know is Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
They have a positive memory of me. So it's
Right.
undue pressure. I shouldn't have to do that, but I am in this
Mhm.
weird way. Did you wrestle with that with the New England racism situation?
Um, it's really interesting. I did it. I think that I'm a softie, y'all, and so I'm like so much of my time growing up in New England was just like finding meeting people and thinking that we had this camaraderie until white people, let's just say it,
Right.
right? Until they said or did something to quickly remind me, oh, Haitian kid from New York, I don't see you the same as me,
Mm,
right? And that shit would hurt my feelings a lot. Um, I don't feel necessarily I don't feel a pressure to like represent or like be a model Haitian person.
mhm,
I think that the things that I'm more concerned about are just like representing my culture well and telling
mhm,
my personal stories well and like making sure that if there's a Haitian or just like even Caribbean person that picks up the book or like reads a poem of mine online, they they can understand where I'm coming from, right? They don't feel like I've like cheapened our culture in any way. Um, those are the things that I'm concerned about than any sort of like white acceptance.
yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, it's a weird. I love the New England racism portion of the book because it really
Hmm.
nails it.
Yeah.
The poem, with the T-shirt at the end.
Hmm.
Um, it's because New England racism sneaks up on you a little bit.
Oh yeah.
It's not as declared,
Hmm.
It's not, Southern racism is is almost a communicable agreement.
Hmm.
Here's who I am, here's where I'm from, you know, but still, if you come over my house, I will
Yeah.
offer you lemonade. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Whereas in New England, it's a slippery, booby-trapped castle full
Yeah.
of weird pockets of things they don't know that
Hmm.
might come at any time. You know?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a time, man. It's a time, right? It's like, yeah, you might think that you're on the same page as someone, and then boom, you're blindsided, by some good old fashioned racism, which is just, a lot of New England racism is just liberal racism, so you could just find it anywhere, liberal white racism. So,
Yeah. It's yeah. It was heck. So, Kay, have you dove into the book yet?
Yeah.
How did you feel about it? What did you take away? What were your
I
thoughts?
mean, what I loved about, well, there were a couple of things like
top five favorite poems in the book. Go.
uh, I, what I what I loved about it was I loved the tension between the culture. I loved the tension
Hmm.
Yep. Yep.
in terms of the tension between the cultures, the tension between like the past and the present, past and
Hmm.
there was always that was the constant exploration of this tension,
Hmm.
external pressures. So I liked that, but I think what really resonated with me is, I mean, this is like a music podcast. So I was very interested in the structure of the book and
Yes.
comparing the structure of the book to, a lot of, the album and music that we review.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And, seeing, how like, some of the poems are like a page and a half, but you say more in a page and a half uh, than some artists do in 3 or 4 minutes.
Mm.
Right.
And the book is only 90 minutes, but I'm sorry, the book is about 93 pages.
Yeah.
It's more like it's more structurally organized than an album that's like an hour and a half long.
Mm.
So for me, like that tension between the written piece and the recorded piece, which we most often review, was interesting to me.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about concept albums, and Kay is the one who's always wants it to be conceptual, a through line. Like a book of poetry is going to give you that. Like a great book of poetry is going to give you that, and apparently, especially Superstition, with the continuing, title poem moving
Mm.
through, and shifting,
Yeah.
as you shift, like, and that allows it to move. Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of give like a background, like how did this project, come to be?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd been, working, well, the first like batch of poems that would become this book I wrote in like late 2014 into 2015. And I didn't really think anything of them. I just like it was kind of a time in my writing where there was a shift happening already, and I was trying some new things, and and it was a little scary because I was like, I don't know if these are still poems, right? Like if I just write these direct poems that aren't like super dense and like riddled with flowery language, are they still poems? Am I still a poet, right? And
Right,
so that
right.
was my big concern. And then I got into a writing retreat with some of those poems, and in the retreat, I was encouraged to like go further in what I was doing, and I was like, okay, I'm doing something. And then I started submitting some of these pieces to literary journals, and one of the journals that picked them up was like, oh, I like these poems, I like all of them, I want to publish all of them. Oh, are you working on a book? And like that was the moment where I was like, oh shit, are these a book? And then And so like, at that point, and that was like probably 2015. So at that point, I was like trying to figure out how to write a book of poems. Um, and so fast forward a couple years, I was doing a 30-30, which is like a challenge where you write a poem every day for 30 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna write about. I don't know what I'm gonna write about. And I thought, what if I wrote about superstitions? And then I was like, no, but I got to make it interesting though, because one of my mentors said that, it's when you're thinking about when you're conceptualizing something, it's usually the third idea that gets the most interesting. And so I
Oh,
was like,
I like
okay,
that.
how do I, how do I make write about superstitions in a way that's interesting to me? And then I started thinking about all of these superstitions I would hear growing up, and I was like, oh, okay, we could do that. And so I recalled from memory, I did some Googles, I put together a list of superstitions, and then I just wrote poems based on the superstitions that I was most drawn to. And it was really interesting in what those you know pieces brought out of me, because I didn't know what I was going to write going into writing the superstition poems. It's just like, all right, this is a superstition, and each one kind of acted as like a bit of a prompt,
Yeah.
and then what I wrote was what I ended up writing, and thankfully, a lot of them, lived in the same universe as some of the poems I was previously writing, and I was like, oh, I think these could be like a primary thread through a collection, but it would be another like I'd spend another 4 years or so working on the superstition poems and adding more to that suite of poems and really just like revising and building out that primary thread. And like I wrote some other poems too, but like at the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean it's I said in the breakdown,
Mhm.
in my opinion, the poetry book is the second hardest book to write. The hardest book to write is a science fiction book. Uh, because science fiction fans are tough. They
Yeah,
need it.
that's why I'm not trying to write that shit.
They will hold you against Asimov and
Like y'all
shit.
got it.
Yeah, they will hold you against the billiard ball and shit, the Asimov shit, and like
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah, so it's not like you can write a fantasy book about whatever,
yeah.
and that audience is going to be okay with it as long as the world sticks together.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, the power of an individual poem,
Mhm.
if you do it right, is heavy.
Yeah.
And there are points in your book where it's a really heavy poem and really tough poem, about your relationship with your father, and
Mhm.
then next page, and we're on a new one, and we're
Mhm.
dealing with more. And so the audience, you can't even read a book of poetry the way you would read a book.
No.
You have to put it down, like every once in a while, 5, 10 pages. You have to put it down and let these poems sink in a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and then you, and so because it'll wear you out emotionally. Um, am I making that up, Kay, or do you agree with me there?
No, there were some like you said, there were some heavy parts, particularly in you're discussing the relationship of your father,
Sure.
Mhm.
discussing your parents' divorce and how you're processing that. Where you're right, you read it, and then you just have to take a couple minutes and collect yourself as a
Mhm.
reader,
Right.
and then go either proceed or read it again. We'll read the poem again. So yeah, it's not like you said, a book where you just read a whole chapter and then go to the next chapter. Like
There's some books where I'm like, oh, I finished that, in 2 days.
Right.
There's no book of poetry's like the better it is, the longer it'll take because I'm
Yeah.
sitting with it. Um,
and
it's
then you also have to stop and like because there's a lot of like you said, there's a lot technically going on the page as well. So
Mhm.
there'll be some technical things that you'll notice, or I should say, like the reader that I notice on the page, and I'll reread those again and see, oh, that's interesting how he did that, or I like this pause or this use
Mhm.
of punctuation in a way that you wouldn't do if you were reading a novel.
Right. Right. Because I mean, I think with a novel, it's so the story is very much at the focus, it's at the forefront, right? And then with and with poetry, there are other things at play. It's not just the story, right? It's or if there is even a story, it's there are other technical things happening like line breaks and stanza breaks and punctuation and
Mhm.
just different elements of spacing and musicality in the poems too,
Yeah,
right? That's that all plays a part in writing a poetry book.
yeah. So when it came to putting them in order,
Mhm.
like how stressful was that to be like,
Bro,
oh, what
so
goes from
stressful.
this to this? How do I break this up? What I got a fun one. Where does my fun one go? Should I put it
Yeah,
between my hard ones? Like what do I do?
yeah. Yeah, I mean it was hard because I had to figure out like one, I had to figure out are these poems in conversation with each other, right? Like, do these poems live in the same universe, right? Um, and then do I have are these poems, am I trying to tell a story with these poems, right?
Yeah,
Um, and and so um it took me a while. It took me, you know, at least a couple years to just like really sequence them. And I was probably sequencing poems. I mean, let me see. I submitted the final draft of the manuscript. Um, in maybe December of 2025. Like I was probably like sequencing poems like a couple weeks before, just like trying to make sure that I had the right order, that the story that I was telling made sense, and that I was like, telling a good story, bringing the reader on a good emotional journey. Um, and kind of to what you said too, like making sure that there were brief moments of joy in the collection, right? It is a heavy book, right?
Right.
There's no way around it. But I think that when you have heavy books like that, it is important to have like joy somewhere, you know. Um, Not everybody takes that route, but as I've grown as a person and in my practice, I just think more and more these days about like being emotionally responsible with my audience. And so, that's why, I end the poem with a sipèstisyon poem, but it's like about, you know, um, it's about overcoming. It's about, really accepting oneself, right? And even leading into before that poem, I have poems about like surviving and love and ancestry, um, and familial love and like friendship love, and so I think that's all important too.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite poem in the collection, and I don't have the title because Kay has my book. But I blame him. But it's you driving away from New Hampshire, you leaving New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, oh, I'm so excited for McKendy to have nothing to talk about. Like, just because, like, it when you have a prompt or a plot line or a
Hmm.
memory, it's like that's light work. Like,
Yeah.
this is McKendy we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But that moment where it's just like I'm just kind of looking out the window
Hmm.
at everything that's gone. That's amazing, you know.
Mm.
Um, it's yeah, it's a beautiful piece. Yeah,
Okay, so this how do I find this? So this book took you about 11 years to write.
Yeah.
And so how many in that span, in that decade of time, how many were there any poems that you wrote that you did not choose to include in this book?
So many.
And what made you
So
decide
many.
not to release those poems?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was just like some of these poems, different reasons. Some of the poems like I thought were ready. But like working with my editor and my mentors, I realized they were not as ready as I thought. Um, and some of the poems felt, redundant, like I'd already tackled those topics, or like explore that particular plot point in the book, and like that wasn't needed. Some of the poems just had like a different energy from what was going on generally in the book, and it was just too different to include in the collection. But they're definitely, and there was even one poem that, like, in terms of um accessibility, was just like so very different from what else was everything else that was going on in the book. And I was like, I love this poem, but also, if this poem, like, just if this poem causes the reader to stop in this particular moment in the book, I think it might do a disservice to the reading experience. And so I took it out, but it's a poem that I really love and that I'm
it
proud
might be a
of. And
part of a different collection.
yeah, and I open myself up to that possibility because we were talking about Terrence Hayes earlier, and one of the first Terrence Hayes poems that I read is called A Machine, and like that poem was published in, I think, 2007, and it doesn't appear in a collection until maybe 2016, 2017.
Hmm.
Right. Right.
Right. And so it's like between A Machine getting published, Terrence puts out two more poetry collections.
Hmm.
that don't include a machine.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's important to just, it was important for me to just open myself up to the possibility that like these poems are great, but not now.
Yeah. Like how, as an artist, how important is quality control to you?
Oof.
Absolutely important, you know, especially as somebody who was, I mean, I'm a performer, but also like I'm working on the page as well. Right. And so, and like the debut poetry collection is so important, that I think that it has to be, it's so important to me. And just making sure that I put out the best, you
Mhm.
know, collection that I can.
Yep.
Right. And so, and I'm fortunate enough where, you know, there's been excitement around this book, ever since its announcement. So I'm like, oh, not only do I have to do this for me, because like I only get one shot, but I have to like make sure that I have a good showing for my community as well, and my supporters, and like the people who like really have been like waiting on this project, and these people, the homies and friends and family and colleagues who were just like, you know, yeah, who supported me through this journey. Um, yeah, because you know, there are people who I hadn't talked too much in like 15, 20 years who are like, oh, I got a copy. And I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
pre-ordered. Oh, we got to connect so we can sign it. And like that was beautiful to me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so thankful that I really took my time with the collection, because, you know, I would feel so bad to give them a subpar um, book.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of the secret thing that delineates people.
Hmm.
Because to the scenester point earlier, right?
Hmm.
Like the scenester loves
It's so funny when you
creating
said sinister, I was like, oh, hair part to the side.
the because I had one person who actually confessed to me, I don't
Yeah.
like writing poetry. I need this place and these people.
Mm,
And I was overwhelmingly sad. Like, oh
mm,
man, to be tied to this when you don't love it, that's tough.
yeah.
And like, so, but not everybody's in that situation. But like a lot of times, generating an idea, whether it's a song or a poem, is more fun than tightening it up and editing it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a
Absolutely.
lot more fun to be like, I wrote this 10 minutes ago. Boom.
Yeah.
Rather than I wrestled with this for 3 weeks. Like
Right.
that's not nearly as fun to say and to do to live. But the people who get good at it
Hmm.
are the people who are okay being alone in the room, tightening up
Yeah.
words, phrases, and everything.
I mean, what do they say? Like, create like a child, revise like a scientist or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. You know, yeah, that trust that revision will always come if you allow it,
yeah.
and be
You
okay with that.
and if you really dig into it and you really take the quality control seriously, you will have fun editing
Hmm. Hmm.
because you'll make pieces better, markedly
Right.
better, and that is a joyful experience. Like,
Right.
holy shit, this is 20% better. This is
Right.
fucking
Right.
awesome. That's huge.
And and also like revision doesn't have to be a solitary thing, right? I think that, you know, there are workshop groups that exist. So like, you know, poems are revised in community. And so if you have trusted readers, then they'll understand your vision, right? And give you good feedback to help you make the poem the best that it can, right? And so
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
not a solitary affair. Um,
No.
you take that feedback, and maybe you go back to your laptop, your room, what have you, to do the editing. But those voices, that feedback, they come from people, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Community.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's huge. Yeah, I was in regards to the driving away from New Hampshire poem. It
Yeah.
it made me think of one of my favorite poets ever
Hmm.
is this World War II poet named Miloš.
Hmm.
I love Milosh. I've got the collection of his. It's one of my favorites. And he has these poems where he's walking around Poland,
Mhm.
remembering how it was before the Nazis destroyed it.
Mm,
Going to play, like I used to drink coffee here, and there used to be people here, you know,
right.
and now there's nothing. Like, and he's wrestling with his world leaving.
Mhm.
Um, and but he's wrestling with memories.
Mm,
And like, so I think that poem is in that wrestling with memories bucket, that if you nail it, there's nothing like. I love that.
right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the project it grapples with memory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking back and our relationship with memory.
Yeah. So my first question regarding music and the intersection with poetry.
Hmm.
This is interesting. I was thinking about this all week.
I'm ready.
Flow is an interesting thing in rap music, right?
Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing because it seems to mean so many different things at the same time, right?
Hmm.
On the surface level, it's just the enjoyable experience of hearing this rapper rap,
Hmm.
whether it's, you know, Kelly Chris or, whoever you want to think of that has Jid, who has a
Hmm.
crazy flow and you just love
Hmm.
hearing the flow. Uh, but you have, it also kind of is like, oh my God, I can't believe they pulled off saying all the things they said.
Hmm.
And it was that fun to listen to. I've been listening to The Ecstatic a lot recently.
By Yasin Bey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that
And
album.
so the flow is so crazy because you're just like hypnotized with it, but instantly you're like, holy shit, this is about, corruption in the government. This is about
Hmm.
income inequality. Like, and it's still incredibly overpoweringly fun to listen to. Um, so is there a flow equivalent in poetry, page or stage poetry, where you hit that zone where people are like, they're in it no matter what, but you're still doing the hard work, I guess. I don't know if I've gotten to the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's there is, right? Like I think that there are so many musical elements of poetry, right? Assonance, alliteration, like rhyme, right? And so I think that you can inject those elements into a poem. And so when it's read aloud, it's more sonically pleasing. But then if you also have the performance chops, then you could really pull the audience into like a world and a moment, and like nothing else matters.
Right.
Right. So if your inflection's on point, if if the inflection's on point, um, if the words that you're saying, like if the writing's on point too, right? Um it's just a match made in heaven. You create a moment in a performance. And as a performer, that's what I'm chasing. I'm chasing like trying to create a moment, like whether that's like at a feature or poetry slam. Um and regardless of like if I'm slamming, regardless of what the scores say, like I want I want to do my best and like have I want to be one of the poems that people talk about at the end of the night.
It's yeah, and I and maybe voice would be the equivalent.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
like if you fully empower your voice, it's kind of like having
Hmm.
an incredible flow
Right.
where people are, because you're, if you fully empower your voice,
Hmm.
what that means is there's nothing like hearing McKendy.
Right.
No one can give you McKendy but McKendy.
Right. 101.
Yeah. Yep. So that's really interesting, and I think that's Yeah, but in order to do that, you have to kind of know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the first person I think of from the scene that we were connected to, uh, and R.I.P. Andrea Gibson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had an incredible voice to the work, uh, and it was you were always with her when she was speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Andrea Gibson, they were such a unique talent. And like to your point, I mean, there are poets out there where it's like there's a language, there's a performance, and it's just like lockstep, right? Um, they speak and it's a poem, even when it's not a poem.
Yep.
And you just want to hear more, right? Um, that's a talent, you know. That's definitely a talent. Andrea Gibson, thinking about somebody like a Saul Williams, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a very unique skill set.
And one of my heroes within the New England scene was a gentleman named Jack McCarthy.
Yep.
Um, and I learned a lot from Jack McCarthy,
Hmm.
um, and diving deep into his work and how he could, because he always had an incredible voice, right, to his
Yeah.
work, but he figured out how to plot it
Hmm.
and like, this is the ending, you know what I mean?
Right,
And this is
right.
building, and it was always like it was very cinematic, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and Jack influenced so many people in the New England poetry slam scene, right? Like he was around from damn near the beginning of everything, right? And
Yep.
yeah, and so I'm not here without somebody influencing Jack McCarthy,
Sure.
and so yeah, no, definitely Jack McCarthy. Also thinking about somebody like you know, Omozeli Aqualo, who passed away a couple years ago, who was like just had a masterful delivery. The writing was on point. Um, and like, yeah, just his control of the vocals was just like no one I'd ever seen ever, right? And so and that man wasn't the most theatrical. Um, would just walk up to a mic and then just like let the vocals do the work. And we were pulled into the world of the poem. And the language was languaging. And the concepts were like really unique, right? Um,
Yeah.
like he used to have a poem about like a personal poem as the devil standing behind somebody at the line to the bank or something like that.
Yep.
Um, and so, or he had another poem about like in the voice of like a sheriff who the sheriff of the town where the youngest black boy in history was executed.
Oof.
And it talks about like racism and the lynch mob like being a beast, right? Like the beast is a metaphor, and it talks about how like all of the hate just swirls into this beast that appears in a courtroom, right? And yeah, and it's just I've never heard a poem like that ever since. It's
Yeah.
again,
And
folks
that's
like that are just one of one, in a lot of ways.
yeah, and it changes the atmosphere of what's possible, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was makes me think when a lot of the things I remember most is being outside talking shit
Mm-hmm.
to great poets,
Yeah,
and like
it's a great pastime.
it's great pass on two of the great moments, two of the great things we were always talking about was music and
Mhm.
stand-up comedy.
Hmm.
There was a connection there.
Yeah.
Like it felt like, okay, stand-up comedians, they understand how hard this is.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like, musicians understand how magical this can be. You know what I'm saying? Like, and there was a sense of both of those of like, every poet I knew had a Tom Waits take, you know?
Hmm.
Um, it was just what it was. And so it was just interesting how all that interacted um, with the world. Who was the first poet that you were like, oh, this is actually good music too? Like they actually made good music.
Yeah, that's tricky for me, like a poet who actually makes good. I mean, I guess like Saul Williams early on, like early on, I found out about Saul Williams. Like I had watched, Slam Nation, like the old like
Documentary,
Poetry
yeah.
Slam
Yep.
documentary that followed the 1996 New Rican Poetry Slam team. And, Saul Williams was on that team and like very much just in his bag. Um, and so I was like, who is this guy? And I just like kept on Googling and researching and found out that he did music and listened to his music and went to see him live to perform music. And yeah, and I was like, oh, this is excellent. This is
Yeah.
great. But I think like to what I was speaking on earlier, there are so many musicians that start off as poets, and you can tell, like, I think about how like Mick Jenkins constructs his rhymes. I'm like,
Hmm.
this is poetic as fuck. Or even somebody like from like the West Coast, like somebody like West Side Boogie. Like I like how he constructs his
Oh, I
rhymes
like
too.
that.
It
Yeah,
feels very poetic to me.
absolutely. I agree
Yeah.
with that. And
And like,
even like if you go like Boots Riley, you know,
yeah.
somebody where like that was I remember there was a great documentary about freestyle, and there was like a 3 minute interview with Boots Riley. He's like, I don't fuck with that. I write
Mm.
my shit, I edit my shit,
Yeah.
I don't freestyle anything. And I was like, good for you. But I think that he's always seemed like someone who takes that very seriously.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
but also like really incorporated swing and
Hmm.
different kind of music to kind of push what he was good at
Hmm.
um, to new places. So yeah, there's lots of. I mean, for me, it was because Gil Scott Heron was kind of just a thing that we had
Right.
heard about. Like it was
Right.
like okay, and then when I went back to the music, Pieces of a Man became like it's my third favorite album of all time. I
Hmm.
was like, oh, this guy's actually good
Yeah.
music too. Like, if all he could do was, Whitey to the Moon or Revolution Not Be Televised, that would be great. Like, that would be great too.
Right, right.
But
But he
he
can do
he had
more.
so much he could do. Yeah. Yep. So that was interesting. But yeah, there's lots of I don't know. And so the other thing I wanted to ask you
Mhm.
about being present in poetry or not is that old dirty bastard moment where
Mm.
someone comes in reckless as fuck, not following the rules of everyone else, but it works better than everybody else, and it sounds
Mm.
amazing. And the technicians are like, "What the fuck is this?" You know?
Yeah.
Um, does that happen? I feel like that happens more in poetry than people think.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think so. And I think that I feel like I have similar moments, right? Not similar moments. What am I trying to say? I feel like I feel similar feelings when somebody who is just like completely different from what I'm used to seeing in the scene just pop up out of nowhere. And they're just like maybe they haven't been writing that long and they're just doing their thing. And it's just like it stands out so much, right? And I'm like, oh shit, like I don't even know, this is so like alien from what I'm used to seeing. Like I don't know what to do with this, but this is something is happening here.
Hmm.
Um, and as a mentor, I'm like, how do I how do I try and help elevate this person if I can,
Right.
you know?
How do you push them? Because, and that's one of the things, if you're actually going to be a mentor,
Mhm.
you can't make them into you.
No,
You
that's like
have
my
to,
worst nightmare.
right. You have to like give them tips to be the best version of themselves.
Hmm.
Lean more into what you're good at. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Go further down that road. And like, yeah, it's interesting to think about because you were talking about engineering a moment, right?
Hmm.
Like, but there's no perfect science to creating a moment, right?
No.
Sometimes it should be a moment and it's not,
Yep.
right? And sometimes somebody walks on stage half drunk and perfectly synthesizes something everybody in the room's feeling,
Hmm.
and it's like nothing you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And after all the experienced poets in the venue are like, is that like a giant monster talent, or was that just a drunk that's gonna go and we're never gonna see again?
Yeah. And going to places like the Cantab Lounge in Cambridge, um, in the late 2000s, 2010s, like you would see moments like that. You would see somebody just like come down to the reading, read a poem. Maybe they're a little bit tipsy, maybe not. And it's just the most brilliant shit ever. And then you never see them again.
Ever see him again?
But everybody's like, oh, that was a moment, right? And so shout out to the moments that don't overstay their welcome.
Right, right. No, it's wild. So that, and I think that's what gets lost, Kay, in this kind of professorial view of poetry. That like, no, there's so much madness in poetry.
Hmm.
There's so much madness. Um, and you can just find everything there. And so and poetry finds itself everywhere else. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All these youth slam poets who become rappers or singers or whatever. And the interesting thing about the talent thing we were talking about, the people that create moments may never see again. It's very similar. We've interviewed producers and been like, the stuff you sample is so different. No one does that. And they're just like, this is just what I like to listen to.
Right.
Because they're sitting in their house just listening to the music they like, sampling what they like. And it might be a mixture that's weird to you,
Hmm.
but it's not weird to them because it's them, you know? And so the person who comes on stage with a completely different calibrated rhythm
Hmm.
and kills it, that might be just how they are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also like think about all the musicians and writers who create something because they're just like, I was looking for this thing and it didn't exist. And so I just made it. Right. And like that's inventiveness. That's innovation. That like has the potential to influence like future generations of artists or even like people who receive art. Like that's important. The that daring to just say, here's this thing in the world that I want. It's not in the world. I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that shit sounds beautiful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you go up and you hear, I mean, how many sex poems have you heard on stage? Right?
Too many.
A lot. And most
Too
of the
many.
time,
I be
it's,
dodging erotic poetry night, like, whoa.
but by the way, it's one of the reasons I left Slam. I have,
The erotic poetry night got you out of here? Okay.
so
I
I have
understand.
this, and I had to do it for them, not me, right? I have this reaction. I have this reaction where somebody would be like, and I inserted the finger in it, and I would just be like,
Yeah, like,
whoa, or like do a
nope.
crazy ad lib
Yeah.
reaction in the crowd. I would be really loud in the crowd, or just laughing, like, and it would throw them off. But I would be
Yeah.
like, I would be laughing because I'm like, yo, I can't believe you went up there and
Hmm.
did all that. But like, I just thought it was hilarious. I thought sex
Hmm.
poems were kind of hilarious. But
Yeah.
um but when they're well done, it's wild.
Yeah,
Like, oh shit, this is gripping. Um,
yeah,
uh, but it's, you know, yeah, but most of the time you're just sitting there like, what? And yeah,
yeah. I mean, admittedly, there is like definitely there's definitely a difference between like the pros and like the amateur hour when it comes to sex poems, right? Like
yep.
I don't need to hear you talk about like fruits and ice cream and lollipops or whatever the fuck. Like that's not interesting to me. But no, I've definitely read a couple sex poems over the years where I'm like, yeah, that's the one. You know, that's the one.
Absolutely. So but yeah, it's wild, and I wish people were, I guess, more cognizant of the connection
Hmm.
uh, between music and poetry.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't want all poets necessarily to become musicians.
Same.
Uh,
Big same.
I don't think I don't think it's the same natural rhythm thing.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think everybody can rap. I
Hmm.
don't want that. Um, but Kay, do you have any other standout things in the book that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, my favorite here, and I have it. I'm gonna
I got a poem where I'm a failed rapper trying to become a poet.
You get
That
it?
poem. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
the the Mwan Papal Creole.
Moi papa le Creole.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it just it was it's just the embodiment, of the book for me, in terms of,
Mm,
there's some poignant moments in there, uh, along with some humor, some
hmm.
self-reflection. You're touching on the themes of, tradition,
Hmm.
modernness, and you know, I think for me that poem kind of, and it's an early one too. That poem
Yeah.
kind of is like an embodiment of all of the themes of the book to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that, right? Like I think that it's always so interesting to hear like which poems are resonating with folks. Like I have my favorite poems, but like people have, different poems, which is dope. But I appreciate you bringing that poem up, Kay. Yeah, I think that, that poem really is, I guess, the first moment in the poem where I directly talk about like language and tradition. And then it also, and grappling with like losing language. Um, and then there's another poem in the back end called Pate, which is kind of like completes that like um arc, right? And so Pate is about trying to reach for the second language again, trying to reach for Creole, like as an adult.
So you structured it that for that art, you structured it specifically over the book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, then I'm gonna write a poem called Pate and put it in the third section. But I was like, oh, I have this poem that's like been living in the first section, and then I have this other poem, and I think for what I'm trying to do in the third section, this other poem, that Pate, would actually um like it would work really well.
Mm.
So there was intention behind it, but I just kind of wrote those poems independently and then, you know, realized that they're in conversation with each other. And I could do like a thing like that in the book.
And you can space it out, and it can be a recurring. Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. The the question here, interesting question.
Hmm.
Let's say there's someone who listens to a ton of rap music, underground rap music, right?
Hmm.
Thoughtful rap music, but doesn't know anything about poetry
Hmm.
and wants to get in on who are the best out there that I should listen to or check out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. There are so many talented poets out there, so many talented poets, thinking about folks like more on the spoken word scene. I think about folks like I mean, Rudy Francisco is a big one, super talented. Stephen Willis, super
Mhm.
talented. Um, folks like and they're not as active anymore, but folks like Dinesh Smith and Franny
Sure.
Choi and Hanif. And then some like more local folks in New England, thinking about folks like Aparna Paul, who's out of Boston, Jennifer Martinez, who's like excellent, excellent. She's out of Boston as well. Um, yeah, and there are endless, endless poets. Portia Olayiwola, who um, had an amazing run in Poetry Slam, and Crystal Valentine. Um, yeah, let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to think of
For me, in
poets.
terms of
Yeah.
like page poets I could give you to read, or maybe not even page poets, but like if I was thinking of the finest poets, my number one right now, my favorite poet going right now is Ocean Vuong.
Oh, if we're getting into the page bag, yeah, Ocean
We're
Vuong
getting,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Ocean
I'm going to
Vuong,
start you with here, buy this book. You'll see.
yeah.
And
Which
Ocean
book?
Vuong
Which
is the
collection? That's
first
the
one.
real question.
It's got to be the Apocalypse Now shit. If you're going to start somebody somewhere,
Yeah.
come on. That shit is crazy. But yeah, you can start them anywhere. That's the cool thing. But that's such a narrative arc
Yeah.
uh, that I would go with
Like,
that.
yeah, I mean, Night Sky with Exit Wound by Ocean Vuong is like an excellent,
Night
excellent
Sky
book.
with Exit Wounds. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that
So,
is
yeah.
the other one. Um, I always recommend Adrian Matejka. I
Mm-hmm.
love Adrian Matejka.
Yeah.
Um, this is the Map of the
Brilliant.
Stars or whatever. That
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
amazing. Big Smoke is like nothing I've
Yeah.
ever read before.
That's the
Uh,
one that got me onto him, Big Smoke.
Big Smoke is nuts, and it's a graphic novel now. Shout out to Big
Wild,
Smoke.
wild.
Um, it's. Do you know? Have I told you about Big Smoke? Hey,
No.
it's a book of poetry from the perspective of the boxer Jack Johnson.
Hmm.
Hmm. Sit down.
I actually got to way back when I wasn't thinking about the audience or anything. I actually got to talk to Matejka. We did a full interview. It's on the YouTube page, and I got to go nerdy with him about Jack Johnson, and it was fabulous. Um, One of my favorite people. The other third, I would go Ada Limon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, she's amazing. She's amazing.
He's one of those people where you're almost happier when there's nothing happening in the book. If Ada
Yeah.
Limon is just gardening, that's going to be the most emotional shit you've ever heard in your life.
No, that's real as fuck.
She's incredible at that
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but every day there's some crazy someone does something incredible that I didn't expect. You
Hmm.
know, um, the who had the Dr. J poetry book? Do you remember this? Beholding,
Was it
Beholding,
no, it was
Ross
Ross Gay.
Gay,
Ross
Ross
Gay.
Gay,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Beholding. K, have you heard of Beholding?
No.
So he basically just watched the Dr. J like shot over the Lakers, the yeah, the
Was it the
layup
hook
behind the
shot?
back
Yeah.
uh playoff play over and over and over again and wrote a book of poetry about it.
Um,
He wrote a book of poetry about the new things he was seeing as he kept watching it and how it triggered memories from his life. And
Hmm.
it's an incredible situation.
Yeah. That is like some supreme nerdom. I love it. Like low key, I want to be able to do that one day. But
Right.
yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
That is
I
one.
am
It's Yeah. That's one of those things where, as a creator, you see that and you're like, "Fuck, that's brilliant."
yeah.
Um, to just trap yourself in this clip and
I'm
see
like,
what
yo, you got your
happens.
shit off, bro.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
did.
Ross Gay's special.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, there's so many phenomenal books of poetry out there. Ross, like even the book before that, catalog of infinite gratitude,
Oh,
like um amazing collection. We Nice Guy with Exit Wound by Ocean Vuong, amazing collection.
Yep.
Um, a little bit more something a little bit more recent. Best Barbarian by Roger Reeves, which is like a really great book. Um, yeah, I mean, post-colonial love poem by Natalie Diaz. Um, yeah, yeah, so many great books. Lighthead by Terrence Hayes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
Terrence
one.
Hayes. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody, I always get sad when people are like, "Oh, I got into Terrence Hayes and it's the Trump book." And I'm like, "Dude, you don't even need like he's got
Yeah,
so much better stuff than
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um that like don't even worry about that shit. Like
right.
find Terrence Hayes' Please Please Me poem, the James
Mm-hmm.
Brown shit, like and
Mm-hmm.
just that's he just lives with the music in a way that is beautiful.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
like, go read Wind in a Box, bro. You know, it's okay. You'll be all right.
right.
You'll have a great time.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. So yeah, I think those are good recommendations. I don't know if you had any poetry recommendations, Kay. Um, I get I get a lot of them from Def C still. He's into it. He's still into that shit. So let's go to recommendation corner. Talk about what we've been listening to music wise.
Hmm.
We did some poetry recommendations. So now it's music time. The craziest rapper in Massachusetts just dropped today.
Okay.
And ST Knack
Mm.
dropped an album with Mike Schaub as the producer from Mike Schaub's from Montreal. And it's called Live at the Tabernacle Volume 2.
Hmm.
And it's fucking nuts. It's nuts. And Montreal is a cool place. It's a very cool place. And Schaub has a real mixture of influences. Some of his beats are, reggae sampled. Some of them they're very Caribbean. Like he
Hmm.
has a lot of different uh and ethnically there's just a lot of mixing in Montreal. There's a lot going on. So
Yeah.
it's the Schwab's palette is really interesting with a lot of different kinds of swing, and it pushes Knack in a lot of different places. There's a song on there called Estupido that is one of the best ST Knack crazy jams. Um, it's always good to watch him go off. The other one who's on this album is Chris Keys, frequent producer collaborator for Quella Chris, who did the sudden death shit. Like he's on here doing keys, and he's a genius. So that's really cool. Second one, former guest on the show, Sasko, released an album called Depletion Halos with Dynamis, and it is a spoken word hip hop album. It's on Bandcamp, and it's just really fucking vivid and in your face and about the slippery nastiness of bodies and people. I love it. I love that kind of shit. Uh, it's wonderful. Uh, yeah. Oh man, the track 9K is called "Every Request for an Interview in Which Experience is Replaced with the Word Pussy."
That's a poem title, bro.
This is
That's a
it's
poem title.
yes, you will understand this album. This is very much a poetic album. Um, and the third one that album I can't get away from is "And All Pride Aside" by K1 that I recommended to K. I think that's amazing. "Hopeless Romantic" is a beautiful song. I love this shit. So those are my three where I'm at. McKendy, what have you been bumping?
Yeah, man. Not too much new stuff. I've just been like, I just came back from a writing retreat, so I was like heavy writing. Um, and so I would say, we've been revisiting a little all over the place, but I've been revisiting, the Forever Story by JID. Like, love that project.
Yeah.
Um, just like it just feels like his most like authentic project. Like, and he's like he's authentic in his raps, but just like there's something different about the storytelling, and the songwriting on that project. And it just something about it that feels a little no bullshit. And so just really enjoying that project. Also another project I've been kind of revisiting is Descendants of Cain by Ka, just like on my super duper like underground, like just like Kai is like when we talk about like poets and rappers, like Kai is a poet, right? Kai is a poet. Like just his writing is so skillful. Like just
Yeah.
not a bar wasted, like just thought upon thought upon thought upon that. Like um and it's really admirable writing. And the music is really on point too. So
And that was almost the flex. That almost became Kaz flex is like you
yeah,
guys are driving around in whatever you're driving around in, but my shit has no wasted words in it.
yeah,
Like you can say whatever you want, you can do Sprite commercials, but
yeah,
my shit has no wasted words in it.
yeah, no, for sure. And then like leading up to this interview, I was like thinking about I've been revisiting Lupe Fiasco's discography because like I
Oh
really
yeah.
liked him growing up. Like he was my favorite rapper growing up, and even like some of the I think he taught me a lot of kind of like literary techniques early on. I kind of learned them from him kind of through osmosis almost, like the storytelling, the persona work, think about stuff he did on the cool.
Mm,
Even just to speak on like family issues, I think about a song like, he say she say off of Food and Liquor.
right.
Like I remember listening to that when I was like fresh 18 and just being like, oh, you can write about that, and it just like resonated with me. Oh, I could write about my relationship with, my father or my mother, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, those are the three albums I've been like
I like that.
really
Yeah,
revisiting.
very good. Kenny, what have you been bumping?
Nothing new, but I'm definitely gonna revisit Lupe based on
Yeah, man.
yeah.
And as we said in the Lupe episode we had, my favorite Lupe period is right now.
Mm, yeah.
It's right
Samurai
now.
drill music in Zion,
Music in Zion,
Bleeding
Samurai,
Professor.
like that shit to me that we're getting the coolest, bounciest Lupe we could get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, and I love that for us. But yeah, it's been great. Uh, any other movies you've seen, Kay, or TV shows you're hooked on, or no?
Yeah.
Hey, hey, we've been living it up. We've been living it up. I appreciate it. We did an episode on like PTY, this producer in Canada.
Hmm.
And we kind of had a summit. We brought everybody who worked with together, didn't invite him, and just talked about him.
Hilarious.
And it was great. And people hitting me up like Sankofa being like, you could do the same thing with this person. Like I was like, oh, this is a successful idea. We did a good thing here. And so I love it when that lifts off, and hopefully we can fuck with the structure of these shows to do different shit different ways. So we're still having fun, man. You
Yeah.
know. But yeah, yes, books, superstition,
Hmm.
McKendy Fils-Aimé, thank you for coming on. Thank you for pouring your heart into that book.
Yeah.
Um,
Yo,
yeah,
thanks for receiving it, man. Thanks for receiving me. It. Thanks for having me on. I'm like, this has been one of my favorite interviews to do. So I'm like, oh, I get to just talk about poems and music. This is great.
yeah. No, we You know, may the superstitions walk with you but not haunt you. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that.
What will tomorrow bring?